Sitting here and I'm reading Bad Feminist. I'm on page 58. I feel a sense of agitation trying to read this book. I find the book very uninteresting. I didn't even read the book. As you clearly can see, girl, this is like 300 pages. I'm only on page 58. I feel like sometimes, right, we become so consumed with the brand, with the household name, with a author that we are so in a trance with the idea and the depiction of celebrity that the work kind of falls on the wayside. There is really nothing that I've read in the last, I don't know, let me see, 3 or 4, maybe 5 essays that makes me say, wow, Roxane Gay is so profound and so incredibly artistic and, literature, literary gifted, and she has something to say, right? I think there's this other part of me too that makes me question how, when you start talking about celebrity, but we become so in love with the celebrity and we make this person be whatever it is that we want them to be. I think that Roxane Gay really, really benefits from being queer. I think that she's leveraged this, right? If you want to call it like an identity politic, right? Respectability politic, right? When you put marginalized blank, insert whatever on something, that alone sometimes gives you pull, right? Because it's a very real marginalization. It's a very real thing that people are struggling with who also identify with a certain type of phenotype or a certain type of, identity. I don't want to say representative, but however they may classify themselves, right? And sometimes people can really profit off of that. I think the other aspect of this too is like when I think about celebrity authors and stuff like that, it's like, man, how much of the story has been fabricated? Sometimes I don't think we realize this. And I think for people who sometimes come from marginalized communities, they can get away with this because people are very unsuspecting. I think just by default, we presume marginalized persons to have a more slippery slope, to have a more challenging path. And maybe that resonates with people. I think that there are so many other great books on feminism. I think that there are so many other writers who really do the nitty gritty work of like understanding feminism, especially from an African-American woman's perspective, understanding feminism in the origins perspective. I mean, for example, I wouldn't say that this book is about feminism. It kind of critiques feminism in a lot of different ways, but I think Subverted by Sue Browder, I think that's an amazing book, right? And it's a little dense, I think, in terms of jargon, right? So it's not that it's just like, it's overly simplified and it's easier to read, right? It's just that I think Roxane's work is so hard to digest. I just think it's incredibly uninteresting. And I don't know. And I always kind of go back to Bell Hooks because I think Bell Hooks is genuinely an amazing writer. And I love that Bell Hooks' work does not center around Hooks and her perspective and her, her life and all the things. And I think as I'm reading Bad Feminist, that's all this is about. Roxane Gay's perspective, Roxane Gay. And 58 pages in, and I feel like, man, this is someone who is about self. This is someone, and it's not a bad thing, but I'm saying this is someone who's about a brand, right? You are reading Bad Feminist and you're calling it a good book because you like Roxane Gay, not because you really care about the work, not because this is a writer who is really, really saying something that is just like, what I mean? Revolute, like they can really change your thinking and inform you and educate you in a way. No, you like Roxane Gay because you like Roxane Gay. And maybe you like Roxane Gay because she presents herself in a certain way. And, she, is coming against fat phobia and she's coming against, queer and all these different things. And it's like, that can be very profitable in terms of personal branding, personal marketing, reaching out to a very marginalized community, making people feel seen, making people feel whole. I'm not saying she's a con. I'm not saying her work is not interesting. Well, this book is not interesting, right? I was looking up some things about Roxane Gay and she has a book called Hunger. I think I might be more interested in reading that versus reading this. However, I just don't really think I'm too impressed with Roxane's Gay work when it's just a bunch of essays. Like I'm not interested in that. You know what I mean? I'm not interested in that. I think, like I said, even that approach of just kind of being like an essayist, right? I would say that that's all about, you have to love Roxane Gay to love her work. And maybe I need to get through the book. Y'all know I'm always going to be intellectually humble, right? I'm questioning myself. Hey, what's going on, right? Am I bored? Am I agitated? Have I had too much coffee, right? Do I just have other books that I would rather read. I'm currently reading a book that I find to be so incredibly interesting, so incredibly helpful. And this author is nowhere near famous. This is let me see here, Inger Burnett Ziegler, right? PhD, no longer not a household brand name, right? But I just find it to be just a little uninteresting. That's all I'm saying. Right. And I know books are one of those things to where it's easy for me to have a critique. One, if you didn't finish the book, I'm always going to be humble about that. And I also think it's kind of hard to really sit in a space with people and really be honest about it, because I don't think we realize this. When we have celebrity, we then have fanfare. And with that becomes a level of societal protection, especially as a Black person, especially as a person who is representing marginalized communities, right? There's a level of protection that then comes. And so you're shielded from any type of critique in regards to your work. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. And like I said, I think I would be interested in her book called Hunger. But as I'm sitting here looking at Goodreads, this book explores the lasting effects of trauma and how it's had on Roxanne's life. You see what I'm saying? So I think my critique, if I'm going to be real with you, I think is very valid. I think that what I have shared and what I've kind of conjured within these 58 pages is so relevant in the sense that I'm so proud of myself and a little gassed a little bit. Let me not say proud of myself. I'm not proud of critiquing. I'm just more so impressed at my level of perception in regards to reading books, and how I didn't need to get through this whole book to kind of know within the first couple of pages that I was very uninterested, right? Like I said, even in reading this, now granted, this is a memoir, right? Hunger is a memoir. I have another book by her called Opinions. It's the same type of essay type of style book. I got it at Barnes & Noble a few years ago. I read one essay. It was about her brother and, race and things like that, racism. I think she shares something about her brother and, maybe her nephew. I could be wrong. I'm not going to go off on the deep end there, but I was a little intrigued by that. And so it's not that her pieces aren't intriguing. It's that Roxane Gay writes from the perspective of Roxane Gay. In order to like Roxane Gay's work, you have to be a fan of Gay, because her work is about her. And that's what makes I'm not interested. I don't really find that she's someone who is incredibly interesting to always to have novels, right? 300-page novels sharing her perspective on things. And that's what I say when I say I don't think that the hype and all of that around her work, I don't think it's about her work. I think people are a fan of her. And I think when you come out and you are representing marginalized communities and you layer that with being an African-American woman, then you take all the other things, right? Fat phobia, being queer, you are like the perfect storm, you know what I mean? For a particular type of people, in a particular type of market, you know what I mean? And it's like that shields people. And so I used Bell Hooks because Bell Hooks was very deliberate in saying, I'm going to make my name lowercase on every book because I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about the work. And when you read Bell Hooks, yes, she cross references her experiences in life. She cross references being a woman, her experience, you know what I mean? All these things. But Bell Hooks has something to say. She has something to say to the people about the culture, about, you know what I mean? And it's researched and it's beautiful. And she cross references books and things like that. Gay, as I'm reading here, and I finally got to the point where she talks about gender and sexuality, she's watching movies and she's sharing her opinion. And I don't care. I don't care how she perceives the world, right? Not because she's unworthy. This is not an attack on her. And I do kind of want to reel it back, because I think my frustrations with the work, mostly because I feel like it has been so hyped up and it has been so incredibly gassed, that I just feel like it's an injustice, because first of all, I bought the book and I'm also reading it on my Libby, but also because it's just like, it makes me a little upset that certain people get fame. And I know it has nothing to do with the individual. And I know it has mostly to do with opportunity, but I think it's more so like, dang, man, it's crazy how across all aspects in all industries, right? You have people who are in a spot when it's like, man, there are so many other people who are much more interesting, right? And who have much more, things to say that can really change your perspective on things, right? And I guess that's more so what I'm saying. And I don't even think I need to continue to elaborate. I think the more I elaborate, the worse it sounds. But I think overall, just generally speaking, right, all personal stuff aside, right, because I'm not a fan of Roxane Gay. I have a book from her. I'm not like a diehard. You know what I mean? So I can say this and do it in a way that's objective. But yeah, I don't think that Roxane Gay is interesting. And I don't really think there's anything wrong with saying that. You know what I mean? I think that's just the truth of the matter. right? And so yeah, I'm a little disappointed. And I think, like I said, I think, when you have celebrity, things get swept under the rug, and I think when you start taking, marginalized identities, and then you can stack that on top of things and it kind of compounds, I think it absolutely works to your benefit. And so, yeah, I'm not interested. This is not something that I feel like I will be interested in. Do I think, identity politics has anything to do with it? I'm going to say no. I don't really think that has anything to do with it, but potentially, right? They like to say we gravitate towards things that are like ourselves, but I don't really think that has anything to do with it. I don't really think I care. Bell Hooks has spoken about being queer as well. So I don't really think that that's, you know what I mean? That really can't be the opposition. I think it's genuinely just speaking, I don't care enough about Roxane Gay, the celebrity, to buy her work and to just feed all these beliefs that like she's just so profound and revolutionary, and she just has something to say and she moves the culture forward. What exactly is she saying? What is she saying? Well, I'm reading this book. I'm not, and I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated because it's crazy to me how celebrity like just shields people from really seeing the work and like people clearly. Right? Like, I don't know how this was able to fly under the radar. I really don't. And like I said, if you are someone who is a fan of Roxane Gay, you're going to love her work, period. Because her work is about her. That's what it's about. But I feel like it's very opportunistic and it's merely a marketing opportunity to take a very, very catchy, big title. And I say big in the sense that there are layers when you say something like bad feminist, right? That's layered. That's very heavy, right? What are you implying? What are you saying? And it's like, you read the book and it's like, bro, like what is the point? Right. And that's the thing about like her work and what I'm seeing so far, just with the 2 books that I have, is like, it's a bunch of essays. And to me, it's like, I don't even know how this would even constitute as a body of work. I could do that. And who am I? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, man. I feel like when you have a household name and you have all this fanfare, you would think the work would be good. You would think that it would be something to where it's like, okay, people love this because this is what it is. This is what this person is saying. But it's like, no, people love this because they're a fan of Roxane Gay. That's all this is. And I'm not saying she's a bad person. I don't even know the lady. And this is nothing personal, right? This is nothing personal. This is just to say the reality is that if you love this work, it is because you love Roxane Gay. You don't love this work because it's changed your thinking. You don't love this work because it's profound, it's revolutionary, it's really, really good stuff. It's her, you like her, and that's what it's about, because that's all the work is about. And that's all I'm saying. And so I guess I'm more so just talking about the realities of like being a celebrity and just how it kind of benefits people, especially in the writer space as well. And I don't know, man. I just find there's so many other great books that we could have read about feminism, and not just for my book club, but just people in general that have nothing to do with a particular subject, that have nothing to do with the author, that have nothing to do with celebrity, but has everything to do with feminism, Black women's representation, Black women's experiences, that pulls from historical data that could potentially sprinkle a little bit of, one's reality, one's personal perspective, but overall cultural trends, cultural phenomena, things that we are still overcoming, where we've been, where we're going, where we need to be, right? And I just don't really feel like it's giving that. It's giving, this is what I think, this is what I blah, 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 and I don't care. I'm not a fan. I don't care.